The fluorescent lights of Penn Station flickered with the rhythm of a dying heartbeat. I'd walked through this terminal 5 nights a week for the past 3 years, and I'd learned to navigate it the way you learn to navigate a recurring dream, half-conscious, muscle memory, guiding me past the same Hudson News, the same Starbucks, the same clusters of travelers who all wore the same expression of exhausted resignation. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday. My shift at Mount Sinai's pediatric wing had run long because Jenny Castellano, the nurse who was supposed to relieve me at 11, had called in sick, again, which meant I'd worked a double, which meant my feet felt like they'd been filled with concrete, which meant I'd missed the 11:15 train and would have to wait another 40 minutes for the next one to Yonkers. The station was still crowded despite the hour. Business travelers dragging roller bags with the defeated posture of people who'd spent their day in meetings that could have been emails. College students sprawled across benches, using backpacks as pillows. A homeless man I recognized, Bernard, though I'd never asked his name, just heard other people use it, was asleep near track 7 with his shopping cart of belongings positioned like a barricade. I was halfway to the waiting area, thinking about the leftover Thai food in my refrigerator and whether I had the energy to heat it up when I heard the crying. Not unusual in Penn Station. People cried here regularly. Missed connections, missed opportunities, the general weight of human exhaustion compressed into underground spaces. But this crying was different. It was the sound of a child, young, maybe 5 or 6, the kind of sobbing that came from somewhere deep and terrified. I stopped walking. The professional part of me, the part that had spent 7 years working pediatric oncology, couldn't ignore that sound. I'd been trained to recognize different types of childhood distress. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't frustration or tiredness. This was fear. I turned toward the sound. She was sitting on the floor near the entrance to track 3, pressed against the wall like she was trying to disappear into it. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, with dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders. She wore a navy blue coat that looked expensive wool, tailored, with pearl buttons and black patent leather shoes that were scuffed and dirty. Her white tights had a tear in them, and there was a small scrape on her knee visible through the torn fabric. But what struck me most was her face. She was crying silently now, tears streaming down her cheeks, but her mouth was closed. Her hands were pressed against her ears, her eyes were squeezed shut. She was trying to make herself smaller, trying to compress her body into the smallest possible space. I looked around. The crowd moved past her like water around a stone. No one stopped. No one even looked at her for more than a second. New York had trained us all to be excellent at not seeing things that would require us to get involved. I knelt down about 5 feet away from her, close enough to be present but far enough not to be threatening. "Hey, sweetheart," I said quietly. My voice had the automatic gentleness that came from years of talking to frightened children in hospital rooms. "Are you okay? Are you lost?" She didn't open her eyes, didn't acknowledge I'd spoken, just kept her hands pressed against her ears, kept crying those silent tears. I looked around again, this time searching for an adult who might belong to her. A frantic parent, a guardian, security. Nothing. Just the endless flow of strangers who had their own destinations and didn't want to be delayed by someone else's crisis. I moved a little closer. Not too close, close enough that she might feel less alone. "My name is Elena," I said. "I'm a nurse. I help kids. I'm not going to hurt you, okay? I just want to make sure you're safe." Still nothing. I noticed then what she was clutching against her chest. A small backpack, pink with silver stars embroidered on it. The kind of backpack that cost more than I made in a week. And pressed against the backpack, barely visible, was something else. A stuffed rabbit, gray and worn, clearly loved, the kind of object a child holds onto when everything else is wrong. "That's a beautiful rabbit," I said softly. "Does he have a name?" Her eyes opened. Just barely. Just enough for me to see they were dark brown, almost black, and filled with terror so profound it made my chest ache. She looked at me for a long moment, assessing, trying to determine if I was safe or if I was another threat in a world that had clearly proven itself unsafe. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it over the ambient noise of the station, she whispered, "Coniglio." Italian. The word was Italian. "Coniglio," I repeated carefully. "That's a good name. Is that what your family calls him?" She flinched at the word family. It was a visible reaction, her whole body tensing like I'd threatened her. I changed tactics. Okay, we don't have to talk about that. Let's just sit here for a minute, okay? You don't have to do anything. I'm just going to sit here with you. I lowered myself from kneeling to sitting, cross-legged on the disgusting floor of Penn Station. God knew what kind of bacteria I was sitting in. God knew what kind of stains were soaking into my scrubs. But the girl needed to see I wasn't towering over her, wasn't positioning myself to grab her. We sat in silence for maybe 2 minutes. The crowd continued its flow around us. No one stopped. No one asked if we needed help. This was New York. People minded their own business. Are you waiting for someone? I asked eventually. Is someone coming to get you? She nodded. Just once. A tiny movement. Okay. That's good. That's really good. I tried to sound relieved, tried to make her feel like this was all going to be fine. Do you know when they're coming? She shook her head. Do you know who's coming? Your mom? Your dad? At the word dad, something changed in her expression. Not fear exactly, something more complicated. A mixture of hope and terror, like she both desperately wanted him to arrive and was terrified of what would happen when he did. Your dad, I said gently. He's coming to get you? She nodded again. Does your dad know you're here? At the train station? Another nod. Did you call him? This time she pulled one hand away from her ear and pointed to a phone mounted on the wall about 20 feet away. One of the few remaining payphones in the station, relics from another era that somehow still functioned. You called him from that phone? Nod. That was very smart, I said. Very brave. You did the right thing. She was watching me now with those huge dark eyes, still crying but silently, still terrified but marginally less closed off. I was making progress. Small, incremental progress, but progress nonetheless. I'm going to stand up now, I said. Just for a second. I'm going to get my phone out of my bag and maybe call someone to help us, okay? Maybe security. Just to make sure you're safe while we wait for your dad. I'm not leaving. I'm staying right here. I stood slowly, deliberately, making sure every movement was visible and non-threatening. I pulled my phone from my bag and opened it, intending to call station security. No. Her voice was louder now, urgent. No police. No security. No. I froze. Okay. No police. No security. I promise. He said don't, she continued. And now the words were coming faster, tumbling over each other in accented English. Papa said don't talk to police. Don't talk to anyone. Just wait. He's coming. He said stay hidden, stay safe. He's coming. Papa. Italian. Expensive clothes. Terror of police. The pieces were arranging themselves into a picture I didn't want to see clearly. When did you talk to your papa? I asked carefully. She looked at the large clock mounted on the station wall. Before? 1 hour, 2 hours? 2 hours. She'd been here alone for potentially 2 hours. Where did you come from? I asked. Before you got to the train station? She shook her head violently. Can't say. Not supposed to say. Bad men. There were bad men. My heart rate increased. Bad men? Did someone hurt you? They took me. From school. Papa wasn't there. The driver wasn't there. Different car. Different men. They took me. Oh God. This wasn't a lost child. This was a kidnapping victim. But you got away, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You're safe now. You got away from them. The car stopped. At a light. I opened the door. I ran. They were yelling. I ran and there were so many people and I found the train station and there were police inside, but Papa said never police. So I hid and then I called. And he said, stay there. Don't move. He's coming. She'd escaped. During a moment of traffic, she'd opened the door and run. She was 6 years old and she'd saved herself. You are so brave, I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. You are one of the bravest people I've ever met. She looked at me with those devastating eyes and asked the question that broke something in my chest. Are the bad men coming back? No, I said with a certainty I didn't entirely feel. Your papa is coming. He's going to keep you safe. He has lots of men, she said. Papa has lots of men who work for him. They'll come too. They'll make sure the bad men can't get me. Lots of men who work for him. I was starting to understand exactly what kind of situation I'd walked into. What's your name, sweetheart? I asked. She hesitated. Then, Giulia. Giulia, that's beautiful. I'm Elena, And I'm going to stay here with Prime. You until your papa comes, okay? I'm not going anywhere. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. I sat back down on the floor beside her. Not too close, just close enough that she knew she wasn't alone. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from my roommate asking when I'd be home. I texted back, going to be late. Something came up. How will your papa know where to find you? I asked Giulia. I told him. Track 3, near the big clock. Okay, good. So we'll just wait here. We waited. 15 minutes passed, then 20. The station began to thin out as the later trains departed, and fewer arrivals brought new crowds. The midnight hour approaching, that dead time when even New York paused to take a breath. Giulia had stopped crying. She sat with her back against the wall, clutching her rabbit, watching the crowd with the vigilance of someone who'd learned that danger could wear any face. I kept my phone in my hand, part of me wanting to call the police despite her terror of them, part of me understanding that whatever situation this child came from, involving authorities might make things worse rather than better. Elena? Giulia's voice was small. Yes? You won't leave? Even when Papa comes? You won't leave? The question surprised me. Do you want me to stay? She nodded. I don't want to be alone with just Papa's men. They're scary sometimes. They have guns. Of course they had guns. If your Papa says it's okay, I said carefully, I'll stay until you feel safe. She seemed satisfied with this answer. At 12:23 a.m., everything changed. I felt it before I saw it. A shift in the energy of the station. The way the crowd suddenly seemed to part. The way conversations died mid-sentence. The way even Bernard the homeless man sat up and paid attention. Men were entering the station. Not just a few men. Many men. They moved with purpose, with coordination, spreading out through the space in a pattern that looked choreographed. They wore dark suits and darker expressions. They moved like soldiers, like a unit that had trained together, operated together. I counted them as they appeared. 10, 15, 20, more. They kept coming. Giulia saw them before I did. She stood up suddenly, her whole body tensing. Papa, she whispered, and then he appeared. He walked through the main entrance, surrounded by 6 men who moved in formation around him. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from marble by an angry sculptor. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my car, and he moved through the station like he owned it, like the space bent itself around his presence. But his face was what I couldn't look away from. It was a mask of controlled fury, every muscle held in check through what must have been tremendous effort. His jaw was clenched so tightly I could see the muscle working. His eyes dark, almost black, scanned the station with the focus of a faced predator searching for prey. This was not a man you wanted to cross. This was not a man you wanted noticing you existed. 40 men. I counted them as they spread through the station. 40 armed men in dark suits, moving with military precision, securing every entrance, every exit, every sightline. Penn Station security noticed. I watched 3 officers approach the group, hands moving toward their weapons. One of the suited men intercepted them, pulling out a badge or ID of some kind, speaking quietly. Whatever he showed them, whatever he said, made the officers step back, made them walk away, made them decide this was not their problem. The man Giulia's father stopped in the center of the main hall. He was maybe 50 feet from where we sat. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning, searching. When his gaze landed on Giulia, everything about him changed. The fury was still there, but underneath it, I saw something I recognized from my work in pediatric oncology. I saw the face of a parent who'd thought they'd lost their child. I saw terror transmuted into rage. I saw love expressed through violence held barely in check. Giulia, his voice carried across the space, deep, accented, absolute. She ran to him. I stood up automatically, watching as this tiny girl in her expensive coat ran across the dirty floor of Penn Station toward a man who commanded 40 armed soldiers. He dropped to his knees. Actually dropped to his knees, this terrifying man in his expensive suit, and caught her as she crashed into him. His arms wrapped around her completely, enveloping her. And for a moment his face pressed against her hair, and I saw his eyes close. He was shaking. This powerful, frightening man was shaking. Then his eyes opened and found me standing there, 20 feet away, watching. He stood, lifting Giulia with him, holding her against his chest. She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face against his shoulder. He walked toward me. The 40 men moved nailed him, maintaining their formation, their hands inside their jackets where I assumed weapons were holstered. When he reached me, he stopped. We were maybe 5 feet apart, close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle. Close enough that I could feel the barely restrained violence radiating off him like heat. You stayed with her. It wasn't a question. His English was accented but perfect. Yes. She was scared. I couldn't leave her alone. He studied me with an intensity that made me feel like he was cataloging every detail. My rumpled scrubs, my hospital ID badge still clipped to my pocket, my exhausted face, my complete lack of threat. Your name. Elena Volkov. Something flickered in his expression at my last name. Recognition, maybe. Or assessment. You work at Mount Sinai. He'd read my badge. Yes. Pediatric oncology. I'm a nurse. He nodded slowly, like this explained something. Like it made sense that someone who worked with sick children would stop to help a terrified one. Did she tell you what happened? She said she was taken, that she escaped when the car stopped, that she called you and you told her to wait here. His jaw clenched tighter. Did she tell you anything else? No, just that she was waiting for you, that you were coming. He looked at his daughter, still clinging to him, then back at me. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, more dangerous. The men who took her. Did you see them? Did anyone follow her here? I don't know. I found her about 45 minutes ago. She was alone. I didn't see anyone watching her. He turned and spoke rapidly in Italian to one of the men nearest him. The man nodded and spoke into a radio. Within seconds, 10 of the suited men peeled off, moving toward the exits, presumably to check the perimeter, to search for threats. You will come with us, he said to me. Not a request. You stayed with my daughter. You kept her safe. You will be compensated for this, but first, you come with us. There are questions that need answers. And you may have seen something you don't realize you saw. This was the moment I should have said no, should have insisted I needed to go home, should have walked away from whatever this was. Instead, I looked at Giulia. She'd turned her head and was watching me with those huge, dark eyes. Don't go, she said softly. Please don't go. Giulia wants you to stay, her father said, and there was something in his voice that suggested this was not common, that his daughter didn't usually ask for people to stay. I am not in the habit of denying my daughter what she needs. I need to get home, I said, but even as I said it, I knew it was a weak protest. Where do you live? Yonkers. I will have you driven home. After. First, you come with us. You answer questions. You receive compensation for your time and your kindness. He paused. And you receive my protection until I am certain the men who took my daughter pose no further threat to her or to anyone who has helped her. Protection. He was offering me protection, which meant he thought I might need it, which meant staying in Penn Station after Giulia called her father might have made me visible to whoever had taken her. Am I in danger? I asked bluntly. I don't know yet. I will know within the hour. Until then, you stay with us. One of the men approached, speaking quickly in Italian. The father's expression darkened. He responded in rapid-fire Italian, his voice hard, giving orders that sounded absolute. Then he looked back at me. We're leaving. Now. I should call someone. My roommate. She'll worry. You can call from the car. He turned and began walking toward the exit, Giulia still in his arms. The 40 men moved with him, surrounding her, creating a wall of protection. I stood there for approximately 3 seconds, understanding that I was at a fork in the road. One direction led home, to my apartment, to my normal life. The other direction led toward something I couldn't name yet, something dangerous and compelling and utterly outside my experience. Giulia turned her head and looked at me over her father's shoulder. Please, she mouthed. I followed them. The crowd in Penn Station parted. The men in suits moved with precision, creating a corridor, sweeping the space with their eyes. I walked in the center of this formation, surrounded by dangerous men I didn't know, following a child I'd met less than an hour ago, and her father who commanded more firepower than a small army. We exited onto 8th Avenue. A line of black SUVs waited at the curb, engines running, drivers standing at attention. the kind of vehicles that cost 6 figures and came with bulletproof glass as a standard feature. Giulia's father moved toward the center vehicle. One of the men opened the back door. He climbed in with Giulia still in his arms, never letting her go, never putting her down. Another man gestured to me. "Please, miss. This vehicle." I climbed into the SUV. The leather seats were soft and smelled new. The interior was immaculate. The windows were tinted so darkly I could barely see out. Giulia's father sat across from me. Giulia now settled on his lap. She'd finally released her death grip on his neck and was sitting with her back against his chest, his arms around her, still clutching her rabbit. The door closed. The vehicle pulled away from the curb. The convoy moved as a unit through the Manhattan streets, traveling north. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Giulia's father looked at me with those dark, assessing eyes and said, "My name is Dante Morozov. You have saved my daughter's life tonight. For this, you have my eternal gratitude." He paused. "And my protection, whether you want it or not." The way he said it made clear that his protection was not optional, that I'd crossed into his orbit, and leaving it was no longer entirely my choice. "Tell me everything," he said. "From the beginning, every detail, everything my daughter said, everyone you saw, everything you noticed." So I told him. And as I spoke, I watched his face and understood that I'd stepped into a world where normal rules didn't apply, where violence was currency and protection was both gift and prison. And I understood that whatever happened next, my life had just changed irrevocably. The question was whether that change would save me or destroy me. The convoy moved through Manhattan with the kind of confidence that suggested traffic laws were suggestions rather than requirements. We ran 2 red lights. No one honked, no one challenged us. The other vehicles simply moved out of the way, as if they could sense that arguing with this particular formation of SUVs would be a losing proposition. I sat across from Dante Morozov and his daughter, my hands folded in my lap to keep them from shaking. The adrenaline that had sustained me, through finding Giulia, through staying with her, through the arrival of 40 armed men, was beginning to fade. In its place came the cold recognition of what I'd actually walked into. Giulia had fallen asleep against her father's chest. The exhaustion and terror of the past few hours had finally caught up with her small body. She looked peaceful now, her face relaxed, her breathing even. Dante's hand moved slowly through her hair, a gesture so gentle it contradicted everything else about him. "Start from the moment you saw her," Dante said quietly. His voice was low enough not to wake Giulia, but it carried the weight of absolute command. "What time was it?" 11:47, I said. I checked my phone when I heard her crying. Describe the crying. I thought about how to articulate it. Silent. She was sobbing but trying not to make noise, like she'd learned that making noise was dangerous. Her hands were over her ears. She was pressed against the wall near track 3, trying to make herself as small as possible. Dante's jaw tightened. The muscle there worked like he was physically restraining himself from doing violence to whoever had taught his daughter that sound meant danger. What was she wearing? Navy blue wool coat, black patent leather shoes, white tights with a tear in them. There was a scrape on her knee. She was clutching a pink backpack with silver stars and a stuffed rabbit. "Coniglio," Dante said softly. "Yes, she told me his name. Her mother gave her that rabbit, before she died." The revelation hung in the air between us. Giulia had lost her mother. I didn't ask how or when. The grief in Dante's voice when he mentioned it told me enough. "Did anyone approach her while you were with her?" he asked. "No. People walked past. No one stopped. No one even looked at her for more than a second." "Good." He seemed to relax fractionally. "That means they lost her trail. They don't know where she went after she escaped." She said she ran when the car stopped. At a light. She said there were lots of people and she found the station and hid. "My daughter is very intelligent," Dante said, and there was pride in his voice beneath the fury. "She has been taught what to do if she is ever taken. Call me. Stay in public. Avoid police." "Wait. Why avoid police?" I asked, then immediately regretted it. That was probably not a question I was supposed to ask. Dante looked at me with those dark eyes. "Because in my world, Miss Volkov, police are not always allies. Sometimes they are bought. Sometimes they report to people who wish me harm. Sometimes they create complications that make retrieving my daughter safely more difficult." He paused. "I have people inside the NYPD who are loyal. I have people in federal agencies who I trust. But a 6-year-old child cannot distinguish between safe police and unsafe police. So I teach her. Call Papa. Only Papa. The SUV turned onto the FDR drive, heading north along the East River. The city lights reflected off the water, creating ribbons of gold and white that moved like liquid. Did she tell you who took her? Dante asked. No, just that there were bad men, that they took her from school, that the driver wasn't there, and different men came in a different car. Dante's expression went cold. Not angry, colder than angry, like he'd moved past emotion into pure calculation. Her driver is dead. They found his body in an alley 6 blocks from her school. Execution style. Single shot to the back of the head. I felt my stomach lurch. Oh God. The men who take children, Dante continued, his voice flat. Understand that killing the protection detail is step 1. Marco was with me for 12 years. He drove Giulia to school every morning. He made her laugh. She trusted him. He paused. And they killed him like he was nothing. I'm sorry, I said quietly. Don't be sorry. Be grateful that my daughter was smart enough and brave enough to escape. Be grateful that you were the one who found her, and not someone working for the people who took her. Be grateful that she is alive and sleeping in my arms right now instead of... He stopped himself. Didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. We drove in silence for a while. I looked out the window and watched the city pass. Familiar landmarks, the UN building, the Queensboro Bridge that suddenly felt like part of a different world. A safer world I'd left behind the moment I'd knelt down next to a crying child in Penn Station. Where are we going? I asked. My home, in Riverdale. Riverdale, where the truly wealthy lived in estates that felt like they belonged in the countryside rather than New York City. Your roommate, Dante said. What will you tell her? I don't know. The truth? Which is? That I found a lost child at the train station and I'm making sure she gets home safely. Dante considered this. Acceptable, but you will not mention my name. You will not mention the number of men who came to retrieve her. You will not mention anything that could identify my family or my business interests. What are your business interests? I asked, then immediately wanted to take it back. That was definitely not a question I should have asked. But Dante smiled. It was a cold smile, but a smile nonetheless. You are direct. I appreciate that. My business interests are varied. Import and export, real estate, financial services, and other endeavors that are better left undiscussed. He paused. You understand what I'm telling you? I understood perfectly. You're telling me you're involved in organized crime. I'm telling you that I operate in spaces where the law is flexible and loyalty is everything, where protection is purchased with blood and betrayal is answered with death, where my word is more binding than any contract a lawyer could write. He leaned forward slightly. I'm telling you that the men who took my daughter did so because they wanted leverage against me. They wanted to force my hand. They made a mistake. And now they will pay for that mistake with everything they have. The matter-of-fact way he said it was more terrifying than if he'd raged. This wasn't emotion. This was business. Who took her? I asked. I don't know yet, but I will. I have people extracting information from every source we have. Traffic cameras are being reviewed. Witnesses are being found and questioned. Phone records are being analyzed. Within 6 hours, I will have names. Within 12 hours, I will have locations. Within 24 hours, everyone involved in taking my daughter will cease to exist. He said it like he was describing his schedule for the day. Breakfast at 7, meetings at 9. Eliminate kidnappers by evening. You're not worried about consequences? I asked. About police investigating? Police will investigate a series of unfortunate accidents. Gas leaks, car crashes, fires. The kinds of tragedies that happen in New York every day. They will find no connection to me. No evidence linking these unfortunate events to my family. Because I am very good at making problems disappear. He paused. It's how I've survived this long in a world where men like me are targets every single day. The SUV turned off the FDR, heading into the Bronx. The buildings changed, became more residential, more expensive. Trees appeared. Actual trees. Not the struggling saplings of downtown, but mature oaks and maples that suggested neighborhoods where people had lived for generations. Why am I here? I asked. Really? You said you wanted to ask questions, but you've already asked them. Why am I still in this car? Dante looked at me for a long moment. Because my daughter asked you to stay. Because she felt safe with you in a moment when she felt safe with no one else. Because in the 45 minutes you sat with her in Penn Station, you gave her something I couldn't give her, the presence of someone who had no agenda, no history, no complications. Someone who was simply kind. I'm a pediatric oncology nurse, I said. Being kind to scared children is literally my job. Then you're very good at your job. Because my daughter hasn't trusted anyone outside our immediate family since her mother died 2 years ago. She doesn't speak to strangers. She doesn't accept comfort from people she doesn't know. She's been in therapy for 18 months learning to manage her anxiety and her grief. And yet tonight, she let you sit with her. She told you things. She asked you not to leave. He paused. That's not nothing, Miss Volkov. That's extraordinary. I didn't know what to say to that. I also need you here, Dante continued. Because until I know who took my daughter and whether they know she was with you, I can't risk you going back to your apartment. If they have surveillance on Penn Station, if they have someone watching the exits, they may have seen you with her. They may have photographed you. They may already be looking for you. My blood went cold. You think I'm in danger? I think it's possible. And I don't take chances with my daughter's safety or with the safety of people who have protected her. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a phone. Not his phone, a different one. He dialed a number from memory. This is a secure line. Call your roommate. Tell her you're staying with a friend tonight. Tell her you'll be home tomorrow. I took the phone. My hands were shaking again. The phone rang 3 times before Becca answered. Hello? Becca, it's me. Elena. Jesus, where are you? I was about to call the hospital to see if you got held up. I'm fine. Something came up. I'm staying with a friend tonight. I'll be home tomorrow. There was a pause. What friend? You don't have friends. Thanks for that, I said dryly. I have friends. I'm staying with someone from work. It's fine. Are you in trouble? No, I promise. I'm completely safe. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Another pause. Becca knew me well, enough to hear the stress in my voice. But she also knew me well enough to know that if I said I was safe, I believed I was safe. Okay, call me tomorrow. Early. I will. I promise. I hung up and handed the phone back to Dante. You're a terrible liar, he observed. I'm a nurse. We're trained to tell the truth. It builds trust with patients. In my world, lying well keeps you alive. I'm not in your world, I said. You are now, Dante replied, as of 11:47 p.m. tonight, when you chose to stop and help my daughter instead of walking past her the way everyone else did. You entered my world, and leaving it is no longer entirely up to you. The convoy turned onto a private road. Gates opened automatically as we approached massive iron gates with security cameras mounted on stone pillars. We drove through, and the gates closed behind us with the kind of finality that sounded like a prison door slamming shut. The road wound through manicured grounds. Even in the darkness I could see perfectly maintained lawns, gardens, and specimen trees that probably cost more than my car. Exterior lights illuminated the property with the kind of security lighting that made sure no one approached unseen. Then the house appeared. It wasn't a house. It was an estate. 3 stories of stone and glass that looked like it belonged in the Italian countryside rather than the Bronx. Wings extended in both directions from a central structure. Terraces overlooked the grounds. Lights glowed in windows that suggested dozens of rooms. The convoy pulled into a circular drive. The vehicles stopped in formation. Doors opened simultaneously. Dante climbed out carefully, Giulia still sleeping in his arms. I followed him out of the SUV and stood in the cool night air, looking up at the house that was approximately 10 times larger than anywhere I'd ever lived. A woman appeared in the doorway. She was perhaps 60, with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it. She wore a black dress that looked like a uniform. Signora Rosa, Dante said quietly. My daughter is unharmed but exhausted. Please prepare her room. Rosa's expression cracked. Genuine relief flooded her face. She said something in rapid Italian, crossed herself, and hurried down the steps. She touched Giulia's face gently, then looked at Dante and spoke again. Dante responded in Italian. Rosa's eyes cut to me. She studied me with the kind of assessment that made me feel like I was being catalogued and filed for future reference. This is Elena Volkov, Dante said, switching to English. She stayed with Giulia at the train station. She kept her safe. She will be our guest tonight. Rosa nodded. Of course. I will prepare the blue room. Grazie. Rosa disappeared back into the house. Dante turned to me. Come inside. We'll get you settled, and then I have work to do. What kind of work? The kind that ensures my daughter sleeps, safely tonight and every night after. I followed him up the stone steps and through the massive front doors. The interior of the house was exactly what I expected. Marble floors, high ceilings, art on the walls that probably belonged in museums. Everything was immaculate. Everything was expensive. Everything spoke of power and money and influence. But what struck me most was how quiet it was. Despite the army of men outside, despite the obvious wealth, the house felt empty, like a mausoleum, like a place where people existed but didn't live. Dante carried Giulia up a grand staircase. I followed because I didn't know what else to do. He moved through corridors with the automatic ease of someone who'd walked these halls thousands of times, finally stopping at a door with a small wooden sign that said Giulia in painted letters. He pushed the door open with his shoulder. The room inside was every child's dream. A 4-poster bed with gauzy curtains, bookshelves lined with books in, both Italian and English, toys arranged neatly on shelves, a rocking horse by the window, everything a child could want. But it was also too perfect, too organized, like a room that was maintained but not really lived in. Dante laid Giulia on the bed gently. She stirred but didn't wake. He removed her shoes carefully, then pulled a blanket over her. He stood there for a long moment, his hand on her hair, just watching her breathe. When he finally turned to me, his expression was unreadable. "Come." He closed the door quietly behind us. "Rosa will show you to your room," he said. "You'll find everything you need. Clothes in your size will be provided. Toiletries, whatever you require. How do you have clothes in my size?" "I don't, but Rosa is very efficient. They'll be delivered within the hour." "Of course they would." "I need to make some calls," Dante continued. "I need to coordinate the search for the men who took Giulia. I need to ensure my security protocols are reinforced. I need to—" He stopped himself. "I need to do many things, but first, I need to say thank you. You already said thank you." "I said thank you with words. Now I say it with action." He pulled out his wallet, actual leather, probably Italian, and extracted a card. He handed it to me. "This is a bank card. There's $50,000 on it. It's yours. Compensation for your time, your kindness, and the risk you unknowingly took by staying with my daughter." I stared at the card. $50,000? "Yes. I can't accept this." "You can. You will." His tone left no room for argument. "You saved my daughter's life. You gave her comfort when she was terrified. You stayed when you could have walked away. In my world, such loyalty is rewarded. Always. I didn't do it for money." "I know. That's why you're being given it." He paused. "There will be more. Once I have eliminated the threat completely, once I know you're safe, there will be additional compensation. But for now, this is a small token of my gratitude." $50,000 was not a small token. It was more money than I made in a year. Rosa appeared at the top of the stairs. "The room is ready, Signor Morozov." "Thank you. Please show Miss Volkov to her room and ensure she has everything she needs." "Of course." Dante turned to me one more time. "Sleep if you can. You're safe here. My men patrol the grounds. No one enters without my permission. No one leaves without my knowledge. You are under my protection." He paused. "Tomorrow, we'll discuss what happens next." Then he walked away, disappearing down the corridor, pulling out his phone, already making calls in rapid Italian. I stood there holding a bank card with $50,000 on it and wondering what the hell I'd gotten myself into. Rosa cleared her throat gently. "This way, miss." I followed her through more corridors, past more art, more marble, more evidence of wealth beyond my comprehension. She stopped at a door and opened it. The room inside was beautiful. A large bed with pristine white linens, a sitting area by windows that overlooked the grounds, an attached bathroom with marble counters and fixtures that looked like they belonged in a luxury hotel. "There are robes in the closet," Rosa said. "Toiletries in the bathroom. Clothes will be delivered within the hour, casual wear for tomorrow. If you need anything else, there's a phone by the bed. Dial 0, and someone will assist you." She paused. "Can I bring you anything? Food? Tea?" "No, thank you, I'm fine." Rosa nodded. But before she left, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You did a good thing tonight, miss. Signor Morozov hasn't smiled since his wife died. But when he saw his daughter safe, when he heard what you did, I saw something in his face I haven't seen in 2 years. So thank you. From all of us who loved that little girl." Then she was gone, closing the door quietly behind her. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself fall apart. The adrenaline was completely gone now. The shaking started my hands first, then my whole body. I'd stumbled into something so far outside my normal life that I couldn't process it. A kidnapping. A mob boss. 40 armed men. $50,000 on a bank card. A child who'd lost her mother and was now sleeping down the hall. I looked at my phone. 2:47 a.m. I'd been awake for nearly 24 hours. I should sleep. Instead, I walked to the window and looked out at the grounds. I could see men patrolling in pairs, their presence barely visible but definitely there, watching, protecting, ensuring nothing and no one approached this house without permission. I was in a gilded cage, beautiful, comfortable, but still a cage. And the man who owned it had just told me that leaving wasn't entirely my choice. I should have been terrified. Part of me was. But another part of me, the part that had spent 7 years working with dying children, the part that understood that life was fragile and safety was an illusion, felt something different. I felt necessary. For the first time in years, I felt like I'd done something that mattered absolutely. I'd kept a terrified child safe. I'd given her comfort. I'd stayed when I could have left. And now I was here, in this strange mansion, protected by dangerous men, entangled in a world I didn't understand. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thank you for what you did tonight. Sleep well. You're safe here. D. I looked at the message for a long time. Then I put the phone down, climbed into the absurdly comfortable bed, and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I'd figure out what happened next. Tonight, I just needed to sleep. Outside my window, the guards continued their patrol. The house settled into its nighttime quiet, and somewhere down the hall, a little girl slept peacefully for the first time in hours, dreaming of safety. I slept too, deep and dreamless. And when I woke, everything would be different. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I didn't recognize. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all came rushing back. Giulia crying at Penn Station, Dante Morozov and his 40 men, the convoy through Manhattan, this mansion in Riverdale. I checked my phone. 9:23 a.m. I'd slept for 6 hours. There were 3 missed calls from Becca and 5 texts asking if I was okay, demanding I call her immediately. There was also a text from the hospital supervisor asking if I could cover a shift tonight, and there was another message from the unknown number that had texted me last night. Good morning. Rosa will bring you breakfast at 10. Please join me in my study at 11. We need to discuss your situation. D. My situation. As if I was a problem that needed solving. I got out of bed and discovered that someone had indeed delivered clothes while I slept. The closet now contained jeans in my exact size, several soft sweaters, undergarments still in their packaging, and comfortable shoes. Everything was high quality but understated. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screamed, "Mob boss bought this for you." I showered in the marble bathroom, using toiletries that probably cost more than my usual drugstore brands. The water pressure was perfect. The towels were thick and soft. Everything about this place was designed for comfort, for luxury, for people who expected the world to bend to their preferences. I dressed in jeans and a cream sweater, then stood at the window looking out at the grounds. In daylight, the estate was even more impressive. Gardens stretched in every direction. A greenhouse sat near what looked like a tennis court. In the distance, I could see the stone wall that surrounded the property, topped with security cameras. This wasn't just a home. It was a fortress. A knock at the door. "Miss Volkov? May I come in?" "Yes." Rosa entered carrying a tray. She set it on a small table by the window. Fresh fruit, pastries, coffee that smelled like heaven, and juice, in a crystal glass. "Signor Morozov asked me to ensure you ate properly," she said. "He said you worked a double shift yesterday and probably didn't have dinner. He's very observant. He's very thorough. It's how he stays alive." She poured coffee into a delicate cup. "Giulia is awake. She's been asking about you. Is she okay?" "Physically, yes. Emotionally." Rosa's expression softened. "She's a strong child, like her mother was. But last night was traumatic. She woke up crying at 4 a.m. Signor Morozov sat with her until she fell back asleep. I imagined Dante Morozov, this terrifying man who commanded armies, sitting beside his daughter's bed in the dark, comforting her nightmares. The image didn't fit with everything else I knew about him. and yet it felt absolutely true. "Eat," Rosa said. "You'll need your strength. Today will be complicated." She left me alone with breakfast and my thoughts. At exactly 11, Rosa returned to escort me through the mansion. We walked down, corridors lined with art, real art, museum-quality paintings and sculptures. We passed rooms that looked like they belonged in European palaces. Everything was immaculate, perfectly maintained, and somehow still felt empty. Rosa stopped at a heavy wooden door. She knocked twice. "Avanti," Dante's voice from inside. Rosa opened the door and gestured for me to enter. The study was masculine and imposing. Dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk positioned to face the door. Maps on one wall, not decorative maps, but tactical ones marked with pins and notes. A safe built into the wall, partially concealed behind a painting. Dante sat behind the desk, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. He gestured for me to sit. I took one of the leather chairs facing the desk and waited while he finished his conversation. He was dressed more casually than last night, dark slacks, and a black sweater that made him look slightly less like a mob boss and slightly more like a very wealthy, very dangerous businessman. The effect was still intimidating. He ended the call and set the phone down. For a moment, he just looked at me with those dark, assessing eyes. "You slept well?" "Yes. Thank you." "Good. We need to talk about what happens next." "Okay." He opened a folder on his desk. "I had my people investigate you while you slept. I hope you don't mind." I did mind, but saying so seemed pointless. "What did you find?" Elena Volkov, age 29. Pediatric oncology nurse at Mount Sinai, employed for 7 years. Exemplary performance reviews. Lives in Yonkers with a roommate. No criminal record. No debts beyond student loans. No family in the area. Your parents died in a car accident when you were 23. You have an aunt in California you speak to twice a year. You work doubles regularly, often covering for other nurses. You're well liked by your colleagues. You're dedicated to your patients. He paused. You're exactly what you appear to be. Someone good, in a world that doesn't always reward goodness. The idea that he knew all of this about me should have been creepy. Instead, it felt oddly fair. I'd entered his world. Of course he'd investigated me. Why did you need to know all that? Because I need to know who I'm trusting. I need to know if you're who you appear to be or if you're something else. An opportunist, a plant, someone working for my enemies. He leaned back in his chair. You're none of those things. You're simply someone who was in the right place at the right time and made the choice to help my daughter. So now what? Now I tell you what I learned overnight. His expression darkened. The men who took Giulia were working for the Volkov Bratva. I felt my stomach drop. Volkov? Yes, the Russian organization operating out of Brighton Beach. Your last name is Volkov. This is not a coincidence. I'm not Russian, I said quickly. My grandfather was, but he left Russia in the 1950 seconds. I've never even been to Russia. I don't speak Russian. I have no connection to... I know. Dante cut me off gently. I know you have no connection. But the Volkov Bratva doesn't know that. They'll see your name. They'll see that you were with my daughter. They'll wonder if you're somehow related to them, somehow involved. They'll try to use you. Use me how? As leverage, as a target, as a way to get to me or to their own organization. He paused. Or they'll simply kill you to eliminate a witness. The casual way he said it made my blood run cold. So what are you saying? That I can't go home? I'm saying that going home right now would be dangerous. I'm saying that until I've eliminated the people who took Giulia, you're at risk. Anyone who had contact with her last night is at risk. He stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. I've already moved against them. 3 of their locations were hit at dawn. We recovered security footage, showing the car that took Giulia. We have the license, plate. We have identities. By tonight, everyone directly involved will be dead. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was describing his dinner plans. And then I can go home? Then you can go home if you want to. He turned to face me. But I'm hoping you won't. What do you mean? I mean that my daughter woke up this morning and the first thing she asked was whether you were still here. I mean that she ate breakfast for the first time in weeks without Rosa having to beg her to eat. I mean that she's been waiting in the garden for the past hour, hoping you'll come see her. He paused. I mean that in one night, you've given my daughter something I haven't been able to give her in 2 years. Hope. Hope? She's been drowning since her mother died. Therapy helps. Rosa helps. I try to help, but she's been slipping away from me, becoming more anxious, more withdrawn, more afraid of the world. Last night, you sat with her. You talked to her. You made her feel safe. And this morning, she asked if you could stay. Stay? For how long? That's what I want to discuss. He returned to the desk and sat down. I need help with Giulia. Not just a nanny or a bodyguard, though she needs both. I need someone who understands trauma. Someone who knows how to talk to frightened children. Someone who can help her heal. I'm not a therapist. No, but you're a pediatric oncology nurse. You work with dying children. You help them find courage when they have every reason to give up. You help their families navigate impossible situations. You understand grief and fear better than anyone I could hire. He leaned forward. I want to offer you a position. Living here, caring for Giulia, helping her heal, being the stable, kind presence she needs. You want to hire me as... What? A live-in nanny? I want to hire you as whatever Giulia needs. Companion, guardian, friend. The specifics don't matter. What matters is that you're here, you're safe, and my daughter has someone she trusts. I have a job. I have a life. I'll pay you $200,000 a year, plus room and board, plus a $100,000 signing bonus, plus full medical coverage for life. He paused. And I'll ensure that Mount Sinai's pediatric wing receives an anonymous donation of $2 million in your name. Think how many children that could help. I stared at him. $200,000? Plus benefits. Plus the bonus. Plus the donation. He pulled out a contract, an actual, printed contract, and slid it across the desk. 1-year commitment. If after 1 year you want to leave, you can. No obligations. You walk away with your salary, your bonus, and my gratitude. If you want to stay longer, we renegotiate terms. I looked at the contract but didn't touch it. Why are you doing this? Because my daughter asked me to. Because you're good for her. Because I can afford it. Because in my world, loyalty is rewarded. He paused. And because I think you need this as much as she does. What do you mean? I mean you work yourself to exhaustion for a salary that barely covers your rent. I mean you have student loans that will take you 20 years to pay off. I mean you're dedicated to helping children. But the system you work in doesn't value that dedication enough to compensate you properly. I'm offering you security, financial stability, the ability to do work that matters without worrying about money. He was right, about all of it. I was drowning in student debt. I did work myself to exhaustion. I did struggle to pay rent every month. The offer he was making would change my life completely. But it also meant tying myself to a man who killed people, who operated outside the law, who commanded armies and made problems disappear. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. Take the day. Talk to Giulia. See what it would be like. Tonight, I'll need your answer. He stood. In the meantime, my daughter is in the garden. She'd very much like to see you. Rosa appeared in the doorway as if she'd catted in the doorway. Been waiting just outside. I'll take you to her, miss. I followed Rosa through the mansion, my mind spinning. $200,000, plus a signing bonus, plus a donation to the hospital. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having. But it was also a gilded cage. Beautiful, comfortable, but still a cage. The garden was spectacular. Formal flower beds, stone pathways, a fountain in the center. Giulia sat on a bench near the fountain, still wearing pajamas, her hair loose around her shoulders. Coniglio the rabbit sat in her lap. She saw me and her face transformed. Elena, you're still here. I'm still here, sweetie. She jumped up and ran to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. Papa said you might stay. Will you, please? I knelt down so we were eye level. Your papa offered me a job. Taking care of you. But I need to think about it. Why do you need to think? Don't you want to stay? It's not that simple, Giulia. I have a job already. I have an apartment. I have a life. But you could have a life here, with us. You could live here and I wouldn't be alone all the time and Papa wouldn't be so sad and we could be like a family. She said it with the absolute certainty of a 6-year-old who didn't understand why. Adults made everything so complicated. What do you mean your papa is sad? He's always sad. Since Mama died. He tries to hide it, but I know. He thinks I don't notice, but I do. He's sad and alone and he works all the time because that's the only thing that makes him forget how sad he is. She looked up at me with those huge dark eyes. But last night, when he saw me with you, he smiled. Really smiled. I haven't seen him smile like that in so long. My heart broke for this little girl who'd lost her mother and was watching her father drown in grief while trying to protect her. Let me think about it, okay? I promise I'll give you an answer tonight. Okay. She took my hand. Will you stay with me today? Even if you haven't decided yet? Yes, I'll stay with you today. We spent the morning in the garden. Giulia showed me her favorite flowers, told me stories about her mother, and slowly, carefully, began to talk about what happened yesterday. I was scared, she said quietly. The men who took me, they were mean. They kept talking on the phone in Russian, and I knew they were talking about Papa, about how they were going to use me to make him do something. What did they want him to do? I don't know, but they said he would give them anything to get me back. They said I was worth millions. She looked at me. Am I worth millions? You're priceless, sweetheart. Not because of money, because you're you. She seemed to accept this. I was brave, like Papa taught me. I waited for the car to stop, and then I opened the door and I ran. They were yelling, but I didn't stop. I just ran and ran until I found people, and then I found the train station. You were so brave, so smart. Were you scared when you found me? A little. I was worried about you. I wanted to make sure you were safe. You made me feel safe, even before Papa came. She leaned against me. I want you to stay. I know it's a lot to ask, but I really want you to stay. We had lunch together in a sunny breakfast room. Rosa brought pasta and fresh bread and fruit. Giulia ate well, chattering about school and her friends and her favorite books. She seemed lighter than she had last night, less weighed down by fear. After lunch, she fell asleep on the couch in the library, exhausted from the emotional upheaval of the past 24 hours. I covered her with a blanket and stood there watching her sleep. This little girl who'd survived something traumatic and was still somehow full of hope. Dante found me there an hour later. He stood in the doorway, watching his daughter sleep, and his expression was unguarded. I saw the love there, fierce and protective. I saw the fear, the constant terror that he might lose her the way he'd lost his wife. I saw the loneliness, the isolation of a man who'd built walls so high that no one could reach him. She likes you, he said quietly. I like her too. She hasn't slept without nightmares since yesterday, until now. He moved closer, careful not to wake her. You're good for her. She's been through something terrible. She needs time to heal. She needs you. He looked at me. I know this is asking a lot. I know you don't understand my world. I know it frightens you, and it should. I'm not a good man, Elena. I've done things that would horrify you. I've killed people. I've destroyed lives. I operate in darkness because that's the only place men like me can survive. Then why should I trust you with my life? Because despite everything I am, despite everything I've done, I protect what's mine. And if you accept this position, if you agree to stay and help my daughter, you become mine. Under my protection, untouchable. No one would dare harm you because they'd know what I would do to them in return. He paused. I can't promise you safety in the absolute sense. I can't promise that my enemies won't try to use you against me. But I can promise that I will burn down the world before I let anyone hurt you. Because you've given me back something I thought I'd lost forever, my daughter's smile. The weight of what he was offering settled over me. Security, purpose, a child who needed me, and a man who, despite being terrifying, was offering me something genuine: protection, compensation, and a place in his world. I thought about Mount Sinai, the double shifts, the crushing student debt, the apartment in Yonkers that was too small and too expensive, the exhaustion that never ended. I thought about Giulia, sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. I thought about the $2 million donation that could help so many children. I need to call my roommate, I said. I need to give notice at the hospital. I need to pack my things. Dante's expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but close. Does that mean? It means yes. I'll take the job. For 1 year. We see how it goes. Thank you. He said it simply, but I heard the weight behind it, the relief, the gratitude, the hope. But I have conditions. Name them. I don't lie to Giulia. If she asks me about your work, about what you do, I tell her the truth in age-appropriate terms. I don't want to teach her that secrets and lies are how families operate. Agreed. I maintain my nursing license. I volunteer at the hospital 1 day a week. I don't cut ties with my old life completely. Agreed. And if at any point I feel unsafe, If your world becomes too dangerous, I can leave. No questions asked. He hesitated on this one. If you leave, you take Giulia with you. If you're not safe, she's not safe. I would need to know where you are, would need to provide protection. But yes, if you want to leave, you can leave. Okay, I extended my hand. Then we have a deal. He shook my hand. His grip was firm, warm, certain. We have a deal. That evening, I called Becca and told her I was taking a private nursing position. I called the hospital and gave my notice 2 weeks, which Dante agreed to. I called my aunt in California and told her I was making a change, starting something new. None of them understood. How could they? I barely understood it myself. But when Giulia woke from her nap and I told her I was staying, the way her face lit up made everything else irrelevant. Really? You're really staying? Really. For 1 year at least. She threw her arms around me and held on like I was the answer to a prayer she'd been too afraid to speak aloud. That night, Dante called me back to his study. I have something for you. He handed me a phone. This is yours. It has 1 number programmed into it. Mine. If you ever need anything, protection, help, extraction from danger, you call that number. Day or night. I don't care where I am or what I'm doing. You call. I answer. Thank you. I also have news about the men who took Giulia. His expression went cold. They're dead. All of them. The Volkov Bratva's leadership is in disarray. They won't be coming after you or my daughter. They won't be coming after anyone. I made sure of it. I should have been horrified. He just admitted to killing multiple people, but all I felt was relief that Giulia was safe. Tomorrow we'll get you moved in properly. Rosa will help you get settled. Giulia starts school again Monday. You'll take her and pick her up. I've already informed the school of the change and upgraded security protocols. He paused. This is your home now, Elena, for as long as you want it to be. I nodded, overwhelmed by how quickly my life had changed. 3 days later, I was fully moved in. My apartment in Yonkers was packed up, my things integrated into a guest suite that was now mine. Becca had hugged me goodbye and made me promise to stay in touch. The hospital had thrown me a small party on my last shift, confused by my sudden departure but happy for my apparent good fortune. Giulia adjusted faster than anyone expected. Having me there seemed to ease her nightmares. She started eating regularly again. She laughed more. The trauma of the kidnapping was still there. She jumped at loud noises, insisted I check under her bed before she slept, but she was healing. And Dante was different around me than I'd expected. He was still terrifying when dealing with business. I heard him on phone calls, his voice cold and absolute, giving orders that I knew resulted in violence. But with Giulia and with me, he was careful, patient, almost gentle. One evening, 2 weeks after I'd moved in, he found me in the library. Giulia was asleep upstairs. The house was quiet. May I join you? He asked. It's your house. It's your home. He sat in the chair across from me. How are you settling in? Good. This is all still surreal, but good. Giulia is better. Rosa commented on it yesterday. She hasn't seen Giulia this happy since before Teresa died. She's a wonderful child. You've done well with her. I've done what I could, but I couldn't give her what you're giving her. Normalcy, softness, the presence of someone who isn't afraid all the time. He paused. Thank you for staying. Thank you for the opportunity. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Dante said, I want you to know something. The promise I made that first night, when I found you with Giulia, it still stands. You're under my protection, always. Even if you leave after the year is up. Even if you decide this isn't the life you want. You'll always be protected. Why? Because you saved my daughter. Because you're helping her heal. Because you're good in a world where goodness is rare. He looked at me directly. And because I keep my promises. Always. The intensity in his eyes made something shift in my chest. This wasn't just gratitude. This was something deeper. Something that would complicate everything if I let it. I should get to bed, I said quickly. Early morning tomorrow. Of course. Good night, Elena. Good night. I fled to my room, heart pounding, understanding that I'd just stepped into something more complex than a simple employment arrangement. Over the next few months, patterns emerged. Giulia and I developed routines, school drop-offs and pickups, homework time, reading before bed. She started calling me Lena instead of Elena. She held my hand in public. She introduced me to her friends as my Lena. Dante was around more than I expected. He had dinner with us most nights. He helped with Giulia's homework. He read her bedtime stories in Italian, and he started seeking me out in the evenings after Giulia was asleep, just to talk. We discussed everything. My work at the hospital before I came here, his wife Teresa and how much he still missed her, Giulia's progress and setbacks, books we'd read, the news, the state of the world. He never hid what he was. He told me about his organization, about the violence inherent in his life, about the enemies who wanted him dead. But he also showed me the other side, the businesses he ran legitimately, the people he employed, the communities he protected. "I'm not a good man," he said one night. "But I'm not an evil one either. I exist in gray spaces. I do what I must to protect what's mine, and to maintain order in a world that would descend into chaos without people like me imposing structure." That's a convenient rationalization. It's the truth. The police can't be everywhere. The law doesn't protect everyone. Someone has to fill the gaps. I fill the gaps. By killing people. By ensuring that the people under my protection can live safely. By making sure that predators know there are consequences for harming the innocent. By being the monster that keeps worse monsters at bay. He looked at me. "You don't have to approve of what I do, but you benefit from it every day. The safety you feel here, the protection Giulia has, the stability this household maintains, it exists because I'm willing to do what others won't." I couldn't argue with that. I had seen the security. I had witnessed the respect and fear his name commanded. I had lived in the bubble of safety his power provided. 6 months after I'd moved in, everything changed again. Dante received a threat. Someone had found out about me, about how important I'd become to Giulia. They sent photos me taking Giulia to school, me at the grocery store, me reading in the garden. The message was clear. We can reach her. We can reach you. The security doubled overnight. Armed guards followed us everywhere. The house went into lockdown. Dante spent 3 days barely sleeping, hunting down the source of the threat. When he finally found them, I heard him leave at 3 a.m. with 10 men. He returned at dawn, his shirt splattered with blood that wasn't his. He found me in the kitchen, unable to sleep, drinking tea with shaking hands. "It's done," he said. "They're gone. You're safe. You killed them." "Yes." "How many?" "Does it matter?" "Yes. 7. 7 men who thought they could threaten what's mine." He moved closer. "I told you that first night. I protect what's mine. You're mine, Elena. You have been since you stayed with Giulia at Penn Station. And I will kill anyone who tries to harm you. Without hesitation. Without mercy." The ferocity in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it triggered something else entirely. The realization that this dangerous, violent man would burn down the world to keep me safe. The understanding that his protection wasn't abstract, it was absolute, paid for in blood. "I should be horrified by you," I whispered, "but you're not." He said it like he already knew, like he'd seen it in my eyes. "No, I'm not." He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his hand cupped my face. "This is dangerous. What's happening between us?" "I know. I can't promise you a normal life. I can't promise you safety beyond what my power can provide. I can't promise you anything but violence and complications and a world that operates outside every rule you've ever known. I know. But I can promise you that I will never lie to you, that I will protect you with everything I have, that I will value you as I've valued nothing since Teresa died." He paused. "And I can promise you that if you give yourself to me, I will never let you go." It was a warning and a vow, a promise and a threat. I should have stepped back, should have maintained the boundaries between employer and employee, between protector and protected. Instead, I leaned into his touch. "Then don't let me go." He kissed me. It was nothing like I expected, not violent or demanding, but careful, almost reverent, like I was something precious that might break. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with emotion I couldn't name. "You're sure?" "I'm terrified, but yes." "Good. Fear means you understand what you're stepping into. Fear means you're making this choice with your eyes open." Over the next few months, our relationship deepened. We didn't hide it from Giulia. She was thrilled, actually, telling everyone that her Lena and her papa were in love like in fairy tales. Rosa approved silently, showing it through small gestures, making my favorite foods, leaving flowers in my room, and smiling when she saw Dante and me together. The organization accepted it because Dante made clear I was untouchable. Any disrespect toward me was disrespect toward him, Any threat to me was a declaration of war. One night, nearly a year after I'd moved in, Dante asked me to marry him. We were in the garden. Giulia was asleep inside, the guards were at their posts, and we were alone under the stars. "I know this seems fast," he said. "I know you signed up for 1 year and that year is almost over. I know you could leave, take your money, return to your normal life, but I'm asking you to stay, permanently, not as an employee, as my wife, as Giulia's mother in every way that matters, as my partner." He pulled out a ring, an emerald surrounded by diamonds, the kind of ring that belonged in a museum. "This was Teresa's. She would have wanted you to have it. She would have wanted Giulia to have a mother again. She would have wanted me to be happy. Dante, I know I'm not what anyone would choose. I know I come with complications and dangers. I know my world is dark. But I also know that I love you. Completely. Absolutely. In ways I didn't think I could love again." He paused. "Say yes, please." I thought about the scared woman who'd found a crying child at Penn Station a year ago. I thought about how much had changed. How I'd gone from drowning in debt and exhaustion to living in a mansion, raising a child I'd come to love, falling for a man who terrified and fascinated me in equal measure. I thought about the life I'd left behind, and the life I'd built here. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto my finger and kissed me like I was air and he'd been suffocating. We married a month later, in a small ceremony in the mansion's garden. Giulia was our flower girl, beaming with joy. Rosa cried. The organization's senior members attended, showing respect and acceptance. I wore a simple white dress. Dante wore a dark suit. We exchanged vows in English and Italian. When he said, "I promise to protect you until my last breath," I believed him absolutely. When I said, "I promise to stand beside you in darkness and light," I meant it completely. That night, as we lay in bed in his bed, now our bed, he held me close and whispered against my hair, "Thank you for finding my daughter that night. Thank you for staying. Thank you for giving me a reason to be more than just the monster I'd become." "You were never just a monster," I whispered back. "You were a father protecting his child, a man honoring his wife's memory, a leader taking care of his people. You were always more. I am more with you, with Giulia, with this family we've built." He tightened his arms around me. "You're mine now, completely, forever. And you're mine. Yes, God help me, I am." 5 years later, I stood in the garden watching Giulia play with her little brother Dante, and I had had a son, Marco, named after Giulia's original driver. She was 11 now, confident and bright and healed in ways that had once seemed impossible. Dante came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" "About how my life changed completely the night I found a crying little girl at Penn Station." "Mine too." He kissed my temple. "I found 40 men and a promise. I promised to protect you, to never let you go, to give you everything. You kept that promise. I always keep my promises." He turned me to face him. "I love you. More than I thought I could love anyone after Teresa. Differently, but just as deeply. I love you too, even though you're still a terrifying mob boss who kills people." He smiled the real smile, the one Giulia had missed for so long, the one I'd helped him find again. "I'm your terrifying mob boss who kills people." "Yes, you are," Giulia called out. "Mama, Papa, come play with us." We walked toward our children together, hand in hand, living in the strange, complicated, dangerous, beautiful life we'd built from one moment of kindness at a train station. I never regretted stopping to help a crying child. It gave me everything. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel.